And we thank you all, past listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope that you'll share this video with your colleagues so that we can try to reach more people. So my name is Rich Butterworth, and I work at customer support end of HeartTech Plus. And I'm usually in the background, which is the best place for me. But I'm going to share a little bit of information about our company and about my background before we get started today, since we don't have that many guests anyway. So I taught middle school for 35 years in the Northeast near Boston. And then after retiring from the middle school teaching phys ed, I worked with Pep Grants for a number of years. And that's where I kind of met my colleagues here, Chris and Brian. And my goal is to try to continue to impact the profession in positive ways. And that is one of the reasons why I joined HeartTech Plus as a customer support person, because this company is really committed to working with teachers and trying to create products that really will be what they want. And my frustration over years working with a number of different companies is they didn't really want to listen to any teachers and what their thoughts were. They just wanted to create whatever was going to make them some money. So I'm hoping that my goal is to be with a company that really listens to teachers. And I always tell people that our products are built by teachers for teachers. So that's what our goal is. And then when we came upon this whole pandemic and the frustrations that we're all under right now as companies and as teachers, we want to be part of the solution at HeartTech Plus. We want to really try to reach out to teachers and provide them some support. And that's why we started the channel that we have here. So we're hoping that some of the resources that were provided in the past are going to be useful to you when you're teaching, and especially in the situation. And also tonight, we're going to be sharing with you some information around funding, because we know that's going to be an issue. So we're hoping that we can give you some ideas along those lines. We have really some exciting news at HeartTech Plus. We decided that after this all exploded, that we were going to try to create something that really teachers could use at home. So we're in the process of students could use at home and connect with their teachers. So we're in the process. We'll hopefully it'll be released very, very soon. We have a new product coming out. We're going to call it the HeartTech Plus at Home app. And so that students will be able to collect data and send it to the teachers. And we have we've created a number of different levels so that we wanted to make it cost effective, because we know we're going to be under tough times financially. So we go all the way from a student can use it free to collect step data and SPM data as well, and email that to the teacher. And for our current customers who have a portal, the student will be able to send heart rate data as well as step data to the teachers right through with an upload button, and the teacher will be able to connect that way. And actually, they're going to have a little box so they can send a note to their teacher. So we're trying to create a situation where not only are we sending data, but we're trying to create a method where teachers can really connect in positive ways with their teachers, because that social part of our program is really, really important. So we're hoping to make an impact there. Also, we have got a tremendous team that we work with. We're really fortunate to have the education team that we've put together. And it starts with Chris Meckelberg, who usually hosts the show every week. And then we have our star from Denver, Brian Hull, who is 2020 High School Teacher of the Year, Shape America Teacher of the Year. And then there's a number of other people that aren't on tonight that really are contributing and helping with us. And we are really going to be struggling over the next, 6 months to a year, because I know in my district where I live, they're talking about cutting all art, music, and phys ed at the elementary level. So these are the kinds of things we're going to be facing. So I think rather than sit back, I'm urging all of you out there that are PE teachers you have to be proactive and really fight we all know as phys ed teachers how important our program is, but we're going to have to really fight once again and share that with the stakeholders, the administrators, school committee people, mayors, everybody. We're going to have to really be, we could sit back and complain about, oh, this is going to be tough. I don't know how I'm going to teach now. But I know I had one of the greatest things that I've been able to experience over the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years is be able to meet people like Brian and Chris and see what they're doing with in their programs and how they're impacting kids. So we got to make sure that everybody realizes how important we are and find a way that we can overcome this problem and find a way to communicate with our kids. And otherwise, we're going to have a lot of unhealthy kids sitting around. And we know when they're not healthy, they're not going to produce up to par in their regular core subjects. So, but what we would consider ourselves core subjects anyway, right, guys?
I think so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of my spiel. We're excited about what we have coming down the pike here from High Tech Plus, and we'll be showing you that later as we get closer to the time. And so I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Brian and let them kind of take you through some of the things we have tonight. So thanks again, guys, and take it away, Chris and Brian.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rich. And once again, I can't believe this is now week 9 of doing these episodes. For anybody who's watched in the past, a big thank you. I hope you've learned and taken something away from each episode. Feel free to go back and watch each episode when you have a chance. If you are interested in professional development hours, you can send an email right to Rich. He should get a certificate of attendance back to you, no problem. Once again, like Rich was saying, during these times, obviously we're coming down to the end of the school year now. I know my district is still holding out hopes for an in-person graduation for its seniors, which is going to be held in August now. So we're actually looking for field space, or we probably have secured field space by now, in order to graduate those seniors safely at a social distance level and everything surrounding that. But thinking about pushing that back until August really makes me think from the teacher level, it's going to be difficult for us to turn around from middle of August when we finally graduate our current seniors and then hope to come back to school September 6th after Labor Day. So that makes me think that my district is probably in the mindset that we will still be remote, at least for September and October. Personally, I would think then we would try and go back in a mixed style fashion for November and December and see how that would translate for the rest of the 2021 school year. We've also heard it passed around here that we could be totally remote until January. With that being said, the phys ed staff in my district has now added on more and more responsibilities that we're doing weekly and daily in order to interact with the students. And I think that's the biggest takeaway Rich was talking about. And one great way to utilize a data tracker like heart rate is that not only does it give us an insight into the student's body and how they're working and how efficient their body's working for them, but then also it starts that conversation piece. And it starts the conversation piece between child and parent, between child and teacher, and in between students. And they start to talk about how their body is reacting during exercise and different levels of exercise. So anytime we can start those conversations and then take it deeper into that social emotional level, how is your body chemically reacting when you do different exercises? How does your heart chemically react when you might get nervous and your heart increases, but you actually did not do any exercise? So we can go into the nuances of how the real physiology of the body begins to work, even with students as young as 4th and 5th grade, by the use of a technology of a data tracker. So anything that we share here about Heart Tech Plus, that was always the thinking in mind, and that's why we appreciate them so much for bringing teachers like ourselves on. And we have a team of 7 or 8 of us that really have fantastic amounts of input on what the education and physical education needs in particular in order to be successful. So we've always highlighted the most important data that not only a teacher would need, not only a student would need to know, but then taking it up the ladder to those administrators, to those Board of Education members and the key stakeholders to really justify yourself as a program. So I know in my district, ever since working on a PEP grant, We have been in constant quest for that in order to make ourselves up to the level that all other academic rigor is seen in our district. We certainly are not there yet. We are closer today than we ever have. And now, even in this digital classroom, I think the last 7 years of really preparing all of our phys ed staff for a situation where change doesn't need to be seen as a negative or a chance to push back, but instead a chance to really embrace something new and a new learning experience. So I think not only the PEP grant and moving all of our new curriculum and technologies through the district in the last 8 years has really softened the blow, I would say, for our teachers when it comes to this remote learning time. So we've been very lucky and fortunate. Timing is everything, and it's really worked out well that way. But at the same time, we still in my district fall short to really proving that we are changing students' behavior based on our level of physical education or physical activity we can provide. And that does scare me when Rich brings up instances of budget cuts that could include phys ed and art and music. So that definitely makes me nervous. How about yourself, Brian? Thanks for letting me go on a little monologue there.
Yeah, as you were talking, it really made me think of like the last week or so. Of course, I've got to finish up this year. We have 1 week left of school here in Denver, but I'm really trying to think ahead of what next year could look like. And I know a lot of the scenarios I've seen, some schools may be having in-face instruction 1 day a week where classes are 10 students or less. Another scenario I've seen is maybe 2 days a week in person and the remaining 3 days are at home, kind of what we're doing now, doing virtual learning. And I'm really thinking about what this can look like if hypothetically we're into school 2 days a week next year in person. I tweeted last night of trying to put some brains together and trying to come up with some activities that might work as it relates and aligns to the CDC recommendations. Of course, phys ed is all about interacting with each other, exchanging of equipment, being really close to each other. So I'm really trying to focus in on what can this look like for me to set my students up for the highest success as possible. And even something as simple as Can Jam. I think Can Jam is a great activity and you could do social distancing, but even if you throw your Frisbee at the opposing can, well, someone's got to pick that Frisbee up and it's not going to be you. So I don't know. I'm really worried, stressed, concerned about what PE can look like in person. But a big thing of me is I know physical education isn't just glorified physical activity, but in the school I teach, most, if not the majority of the students that I teach, most of them, the only exercise and activity that they got in one day is when they saw me down in the gym in physical education class. So I'm also got to be cognizant of, I've got to get my students moving, because if they're not moving with me, they're probably not moving on their own, whether that's a lack of resources, lack of motivation, family issues. But I really think even if we're doing virtual learning, we've got to be creative with what physical activity looks like so the students don't get bored with the same old each day. And I'm really looking forward to this Heart Tech Plus Home app, because I could give, let's say, one student a heart rate sensor, and I'm going to leave it completely up to them what they want to do to get their heart rate up. I mean, let's face it, that's what we as adults do. Nobody tells us what we need to do. We find some stuff we like that appeals to us, and then we just go after it. And then I really think it would be cool for students' data to automatically get transferred to me so I can evaluate that and give them feedback as to if they were getting the most benefits of exercise that way. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where my thought process lies right now, is what is next year going to look like. I know nobody knows. I know a lot of people say, well, why worry about it right now? Because this can change at the end of June, middle of July, or whatever. But that's where my thought process is right now.
I definitely think one of our biggest hurdles is going to be the sharing of equipment, because even with a gymnasium space or an outdoor space, you could socially distance. You could socially distance 20 to 30 students in the same space efficiently and still have them moving in their own area and producing some level of skill or movement while they are with you. And definitely they can always be learning while they're with you. But when it comes down to actually interacting with the equipment, to develop the skill themes that we currently have on the books for our standards and outcome measures, I think that's where we're going to get into a little bit of issue and gray area. And that might actually be the straw that breaks the camel's back that says to districts, wait a minute, phys ed may be more trouble than it's worth right now. And I'm thinking that's the similar thing to maybe band or orchestra with the using of instruments and
Yep.
possibly moving, So anytime that situation occurs now in the school building, we always need to be wary of, how is this going to be portrayed in our area? How can we kind of circumvent the questions of that? But I think it's going to come down to way above our head, whether we have phys ed in person or not. I know personally, my goal is to be ready for September to go virtually. And my hope is to at least have one opportunity to put some sort of kit together for the students to take home, whether it be my equipment, whether it be brand new equipment that we purchase in the meantime. I know I'm going to have one heart rate monitor for each student in 5th grade to bring home. That coupled with the at-home app, and then them being able to send that data to me, I think that's going to take the learning level up to the next notch that we want to, and we really need to see it now that we're going to be remote. And we really need to justify what the students are producing for us. And I think just a simple way we could even do it now is that a lot of students have iPhones and smartphones. And with that, they always have the telemetry data and everything that you would need for health. I know the iPhone has a health app that does your steps and can do things like that. So even now as a take-home project, I was thinking of maybe having any students that had a smartphone to have that health app on and go for a walk with mom or dad, and then just simply screenshot and upload that screenshot of their exercise time or their total steps or distance that they did with mom or dad. So that's something where maybe data right now could even be collected and sent to the teacher in some form, because everyone has these smartphones, and that health app and those health feedback numbers are embedded in all of our phones already. So I think that's a way we could start now. And then really, when we have access to the HeartTech Home app, then we're going to have a succinct system where I'm going to be able to push specific data and specific goals to my students that they're going to, try and achieve while at home. I'm going to get that data sent right back to me, and I'm going to be able to build reports with that data. And that's really, I think, the most important part for getting that information back to the student for understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you said that, because that's at the forefront of my mind too. A student actually emailed me before this broadcast, and she wanted to see what she could do to get her grade up. And she said, is there any way I can do some extra credit? And the first thing I thought of was, well, I know you have an iPhone, so why don't you just pick an activity or exercise of your choice, have your phone on you, and then screenshot me with what the step data was or heart rate data. I know she doesn't have a heart rate monitor, but I forget what else the health app tells you, but it gives you a pretty cool bar graph of like what your trends are. And I asked her, if you want to get more extra credit, work out each day and then send me the screenshot of your weekly summary. And then you could kind of compare and contrast one activity to another as it related to the summary of the data at the end of the week.
And that's my thought too, sending those heart rate monitor home with the 5th graders. Currently, obviously, they're 4th graders, and they have used them when we were in the gymnasium this past year. So they have that content knowledge and the working functional knowledge of the sensors. With sending that home, my goal for them would be anytime they thought they were doing an activity that currently they are just logging on my activity log or sending me pictures or videos of, and I'll share a couple of those in a few minutes. Now the goal would be to wear that heart rate monitor when you're doing that activity, use your home app, capture that data, upload it back to me as the teacher, and then I can see clearly everything that you have going on at home, what level of intensity activity you were doing. And, for older students, not for my fifth graders, but as you get older, the accountability level can become greater and greater. And I know
Yeah.
that's going to be the biggest disconnect of being in any kind of remote setting, is what kind of accountability is there for the student to even log into your class or your meeting that day. Never mind, do the at-home activity, do the assignment related to it, and then submit it back into the teacher. That process, I'm sure, is lost on a lot of students. So in order to make it as easy as possible and then add that accountability piece where they need to be wearing that sensor when they're being active, I don't care whether you have 0 minutes of MVPA or you have 40 minutes of MVPA. I just want to know that you're monitoring yourself while you're being active at home. And I just want to see that data. And then for me,
Yeah.
that would also show me how often are they being active at home and for what duration.
Yeah, and I'm really big on MVPA only because what the science tells us about where students get the most cognitive benefits when their heart rate is at least 50 to 60% of their maximum heart rate. So even if my students don't know why I gave them a heart rate monitor and they just put it on and start working out, at least when I see their report, I'll at least know, and it will give me a peace of mind that I did them some good by having them work out with the heart rate monitor. Because if they had 20 minutes in zone 3, which is yellow on the heart tech system, I know their brain was now influenced to do much better and be more focused in their other classes after the workout. And not to mention, socially and emotionally, their endorphins will be flowing, their chemicals to make them happy, like dopamine, serotonin, will be flowing. And a lot of the students that I serve and I teach, that this is what they need. So this is another reason that I'm excited for the home app.
And also, I mean, you could have students logging the activities. You could even have them sending you some videos or some clips and some pictures. But at the end of the day, you don't know how long that activity took place. You don't know to which level of intensity. And then by gathering this heart rate data, by having those conversations with students at home, by them having conversations with mom and dad, then we bring in that rate of perceived exertion and we build on that learning opportunity, and we start to begin to know, are we able to correlate on our own what level of output we're doing based on our activity or our engagement of that activity. So really building those bridges and correlating those two things together, I think, is paramount now. Obviously, the research is just mounting now on the importance of movement, and now the importance of movement during this time. So I think it would be a hard sell to cut phys ed altogether if we had data showing that students right now in the remote setting are maybe averaging 50 to 60 minutes of activity a week in 7 days, as opposed to 30 to 60 minutes per day. So right now we have no way to tell what the actual level of movement is of our students, but I'm sure it's not very good as far as the numbers go.
I wouldn't think so. And I do think the more objective we can get during this pandemic, I think it saves us that much more, just because we're the only subject where we can literally measure a student's effort level. No other content area in school today can do that. So I think it would give us a lot more purpose behind what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Then we could also share that data at home with mom and dad, because I'm sure they don't even realize the cognitive benefits of a certain level of movement. So now once you're starting to talk heart rate at home and it becomes a part of your daily activity and your daily tracking of activity, then mom and dad at home can really say, oh, wow, I do notice that, little Timmy is more apt to sit down and do his math homework after,
Yes.
he came inside. The other day we were outside for an hour and he walked around, and today we were outside for 20 minutes and we did some jogging as a family, and the level of success was greater after the jog perhaps than just the lower level of movement. So that's something almost like an action research that mom and dad can do at home with their child if they had this level of technology, and some do. Many students have Fitbits now and the Apple Watch, for instance, and that's why I always key to students when we use heart rate monitors in particular and the optical sensors like we're talking about. These optical sensors are worn on the forearm or the bicep or anywhere there's really a clear path to the skin, but you don't want to wear these sensors on the wrist. Anytime you're wearing a sensor on the wrist, there's always some bone structure in there, and there's some
Yep.
there's some wrist rotation that could throw the numbers off slightly.
Less blood flow.
Yep. So with that being said, the most accurate way, and that's really what I'm looking for as an educator, especially right now, is the most accurate and reliable way, is moving that sensor up to the forearm, which you'll get a much clearer picture of your heart rate over a course of time. So that's why this is not a sensor that we would have the students wear for 24 hours or 72 hours straight. No, this is something that when you're about to go out and exercise, when you're about to go do that activity that you might be logging or we assigned as an activity for the day, you pop that sensor on, you start your app, you do your activity for 30 minutes, and you download to the teacher. And my thinking is technology needs to be something that makes your life easier. It needs to be a tool to make your life easier. If it doesn't, then that's not something we really want to work with. So for when it comes down to the design of this, it was really meant to be end user friendly and allow for those students to quickly and easily move through what they would need to do in order to get that data back to you, which is the most important part.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Chris, but I mean, we're all human, and no matter how slow or fast somebody, let's say, jogs around the block, once you're done and you look at your phone and you hit end workout, you at least own something. You could have pride in something you just did versus if you don't have something objective, it's just in your head. So I think it would give students a lot of intrinsic motivation and maybe the next day try to go a little bit farther or a little bit faster than they did the day before.
Yep. Anytime you could use a tool or technology now, especially to help motivate a student to be more active, that's always going to be a tool that's on our side as educators. So we definitely want to, encourage the students to do that. I love when students come in and start telling me that they have Fitbits of their own and they have this, that, and the other thing, or they just got the Apple Watch. And, of course, the Apple Watch does so many things. But usually when they come into me, surprisingly enough, a student, they would be showing me actually that it takes heart rate or it does the steps for them. So they are cognizant of the fact that these technologies also measure their biomechanics and their anatomy and physiology going on inside of them. So that's always a great thing to have that floating out there in the consciousness of really being healthy, heart healthy, getting to a level of movement, getting to that level every single day. So when they have that feedback, that's something to strive for. Without that feedback, it's very even subjective in your own head, because you might think you did something one day that you really didn't do, and the next day you might surpass it and achieve greater things that you didn't realize that you were achieving that day because you had no real feedback to tell you how you did the previous. One thing I was looking at, I wanted to share my screen a little bit. Oh, actually, I wanted Rich, if you could pull up some of those videos. I just want to show a couple of quick videos and then some of the data on the backside of the web portal that HeartTech provides that I'm able to log into as the teacher and then kind of build reports that way. So I wanted to take through some data examples now. And then hopefully we can go through. Brian, I want you to then show, after we do this, some of your new remote learning resources you've come up with.
Sure.
Awesome.
I'm going to hide Brian here a little bit.
Okay. All right, so in this video, hold on one second before you start it, Rich. That's okay. In this video right here, this is a little glimpse into, obviously it's a gymnasium, obviously this might not be what it looks like in the future, but this is just how I can really individualize students' heart rates for them. And this is the 20-meter shuttle run. So my gym is just big enough for a 20-meter shuttle run. And we run this in groups of 3. So we do it in teams of 3, where students take turns running every third lap. So you'd have 2 students beginning on one end of the gym with a third student standing opposite of them on the other side of the gym. And then every third lap, that student will be reproducing their run. So what this allows to do is for students to really get a taste of those higher pacer lap numbers. So for example, I will tell my students today during our pacer practice, I'm looking for our team of 3 to go to 45 laps as a team, which means each of them is going to be getting in 15 running laps, 15 consecutive laps. It's going to be every third lap. And then that's going to give them a little taste of the variation of how FitnessGram and the pacer really works, and how the timing decreases, but the distance is staying the same, forcing your pace to go faster. So many of my students, even in the 5th grade level, they won't make it up into the laps 40s and 50s themselves. So doing it through this pacer practice, it really gives them a great taste of what it feels like and what their body feels like when they're doing those upper levels of the 20-meter shuttle run. So you could show the clip now, Rich.
Yeah, I might add, Chris, that with the new app that we have, you'll be able to access actually the music for the pacer test and do it on their own, and send you that information back. So the nice part about that, you can record how many laps and then see the heart rate. So that's pretty special.
That would be
Yes, it is.
fantastic. If they could recreate that level of movement at home and possibly even do the activity themselves at home or with mom and dad or brothers and sisters, and really press that lap button each time, I think that would be great feedback to have for a teacher.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. You can see how the students are running in groups. Their partners are waiting back. They're only running every 3 laps. And what this also allows to do is to see a nice gradual increase in the student's heart rate curve, because they're not running every lap, where some students you might see spike very quickly in their heart rate while doing the pacer. This allows them to recover for a lap or 2 and then get back into the run. And then on the backside, when we look at the data in particular, we're able to trace out a nice heart rate curve and then see what the student's maximum heart rate was during this activity. I use the pacer, especially after lap 40 or so, to be a good judge of a student's max heart rate. If they're getting to their max after lap 40 and it's over 200 in most cases in my instance, that's when I will stop them. But then that's a great instance where I can then set their sensor exactly what their max heart rate is, and the sensor and the system will individualize all the zones for that student. So that's an important step, is to really see what a student's max heart rate may be during your setting and during the gymnasium setting, and then set the sensor accordingly. And then we'll go to that second clip, Rich, which is a little bit more of a lesson style clip. And this is actually from the Connecticut Cadre for Physical Education Election Day Conference from this November. And this is a little bit more of a lesson style that you would see in the gym. This can be adapted for social distancing. Many of the pacer protocols that we put in place, we've seen many times. Before they do that pacer run, I would have students lay down and do a mindfulness yoga meditation for about 5 minutes to try and get their resting or ambient heart rate. So then during a day of the pacer run in particular, I'm able to set a student's minimum heart rate and a maximum heart rate on the same day. And then I'll replicate that lesson probably at least 5 to 10 times, especially that pacer lesson, just to see if the students are falling within that same data range or if I need to make any adjustments over time. So this next video is from that Connecticut presentation, and you can see you can keep social distancing. This is using Tony Loomis and Doug Hallberg's grid style gymnasium setup, so it's shared boundaries. So you can see here we have a lot of movement, a lot of players all participating at the same time. We have heart rate on these individuals during this. Obviously, this equipment is new to these individuals, and they're trying some of these activities for the very first time. But this is exactly a setup that you would see traditionally in my gymnasium, just with students of the 4th and 5th grade level, still wearing heart rate. And this can be adapted because you can have 1 or 2 students on a grid, and then those 1 or 2 students could keep their 6 feet social distance even within that grid. And then having the equipment already located that that student would use in the grid and leaving it there would allow you to, I would believe, keep protocol in some sense in the gymnasium setting. Of course, you're going to need a lot of equipment to make sure everybody's using different equipment and a disinfection protocol. But going into September, I'm going to have 1 heart rate monitor for every student, so those will not be reused. That will be kept in a separate, I plan on having a plastic bin for every student's heart rate monitor and Velcro strap that they have. And I'll be disinfecting those after every class, but then it will also stay in their individual bin, and that bin will stay their bin for the entire year. So I'm thinking I'm going to have about 100 bins on my shelf, each labeled with a student's name, with their heart rate monitor and Velcro strap in that bin, in that container. So also with this activity, this example has 6 mini courts set up, so you could easily rotate clockwise, counterclockwise across the courts to always keep students changing, let's say their partner, their opponent, in this case their equipment in the future, maybe not so much equipment changing. Now, after seeing these 2 clips, now I want to just go to a little bit of my shared screen as I have some data ready to go. This is from the Heart Tech Plus website.
Sorry, Chris, just a second.
So if I were to log into my teacher web portal, which of course is secure, so we want to make sure anytime we're buying any new software, heart rate monitor, data tracking devices, anything that's going to be third party outside of the school district, you want to make sure what your school district's encryption codes are and to be HIPAA and FERPA compliant. So make sure anything that you look into is adhering to all those guidances that we have now in education to make sure student data is kept private. Okay. So here, for example, this is my web portal. So I logged in. I'm here as the teacher. I'm looking. This is that actual class when we did that with those individuals from Connecticut, 2019. You can see it was at 8:55 on November 5th. We had those individuals doing activity. As we scroll down here, you can see every person who was in that class and the duration of that presentation that I gave. So you could see that here, this was a 42-minute active presentation where individuals were engaged in activity. And then if I take a look,
lost your screen, Chris. We lost your screen. Can you bring it back up?
Sure.
Bring your screen back up, Chris. Sorry, technical difficulties. There we go. There we go.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Sure. So if you see here, this is the class session report specifically from that little video clip we just saw. And here's the date and time stamp of it. And then here's a brief overview. So this is just one lesson and how the individuals performed within that lesson. You can see the average points. So our system has a points configuration. So for every minute you're in a different color zone, you're able to accrue points for each student. So here's the average student in this class accrued 59 points over their 42-minute exercise period. This is the average time spent in MVPA, so that's moderate to vigorous physical activity. If we're looking at how this system judges MVPA, that is a accumulation of our yellow, orange, and red zones. These 3 zones added up together will give a student's MVPA minutes. So you can see for all the students we had working over 42 minutes, these are the cumulative minutes they had in each of the zones at the end of just this one class. The average time spent in MVPA by any one user, it was 19% of their time spent there, and that equates to about 8 minutes. Of course, this is the average in both of these cases, so there are some that are much higher, some that may be much lower. And of course, you saw the level of activity there. I was not asking individuals to think about that level of effort or engagement. It was more about learning and utilizing the products and tools to really see how it can help them in their teaching scenarios. We also see the average heart rate that was achieved by any one user. We have an average max heart rate. If I was looking at just one user here, it would say max heart rate, and then I might be able to adjust that in your individual user settings. The average total steps somebody took and some average distances. But what's really nice here is that if I were to go down to one person in particular, I can take a look across all their data domains that we have here. So I'll take a look at somebody who had, let's see, 18 minutes of MVPA. So that's pretty good. That's about 43% of the time. So this is our user here today. I clicked on that one user. I saw that he or she had 82 total points. They were 43% of the time spent in their MVPA, and that equated to 18 minutes in particular. And their max heart rate here was 202 beats. So for this user, if I had their max heart rate set at 200 beats per minute, after this activity, I might want to go in and adjust that a couple beats up, which would just adjust the zones by a couple beats. But what's nice is that the data is put right in front of you here on how they performed, and I can easily
Hey,
go in.
Chris, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. Could you scroll down so we can see what, we're only seeing that first part of the screen.
I must be stuck then, I think.
Yeah. Well, I will say too, Chris, well, if I could just add that we're building this home app so that all the same data that you've been talking about, the student will be able to send that to you, so you'll be able to see that it was an outdoor or at-home session or out-of-school session. You'll be able to see all the same data for each student. So that's going to be good information for you to see, I'm sure.
And the app itself will show this to the student real time. So the student will know this, what they're doing at home, just as they would in my gym with me projecting it up on the wall. They would have all this data real time as they were doing it, and then they would be able to see at the conclusion of the workout exactly how they performed. So this data would be there for the students, and it would be sent right back to you as the teacher, and it would come up in this student's profile. So I would see, like Rich just mentioned, if I were to look at their list of workouts that they partook in, I would be able to differentiate whether it was a gymnasium exercise with me in school or if it was an at-home workout. But all the data would be there and totally reportable for a period of time. Then next thing I wanted to show is exactly, I don't know if my screen is back yet. Has it come back yet? Let me go out and try to come back in, Rich.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Can you see my
Yep.
Turchin 19? Yep. Okay, cool. So this is actually the very next day when I went back into school and I saw some of my fifth graders. It was exactly the same lesson that you saw those individuals performing in the conference for the presentation. It actually used the same exact equipment. I have my own equipment of that same style back in my school, and that was the unit and lessons that we were on. So you can see here, I have a 40-minute class. Our download time that we averaged here was 32 minutes. So out of a 40-minute class, I was able to capture 32 minutes worth of data. And then when I come up here, you can see the averages for the class on this given day. So my average points for student was 96. You can see when we have accountability measures in place, your data begins to look more like we want to see it. Our percentage of time spent in MVPA on average was 72%, which equated to 23 minutes, and so on and so forth. As I scroll down, I'm able to set goals as a teacher, so I can set a daily step goal, I can set a points goal, I can set a MVPA minutes or percentage goal, and then students also in the home app, everything I'm talking about here is also coinciding with our home app that will be available. Students will be able to see what the goal set for the teacher that day, what goal the teacher set for that day, excuse me. So if I put your goal is 50% or more MVPA time of your activity time, then they would know exactly when they hit 51% and they would have reached that goal for the day. So students will see the goals that are set by the teacher, and then receive feedback when they've achieved that goal. So that's super important and a great way to really have both accountability and interaction and feedback discussion between students and educators. Then if you scroll down, this is a snapshot of all of my students in that class. And then this is the whole duration of the class and how students performed at different times. So you can see here during this was our most intense gameplay. Most of my students also showed a level of intensity here. Then I can scroll down. I can see a zone breakdown for this class, which is going to look very different than the last zone breakdown we saw from the presentation. Most of my students' minutes are in the yellow, orange, and red zones, which is exactly what I want to see if that's what I'm using for a measurement that day. And that's the style of grid workout and exercising that I have set up as a lesson format. So the lesson design really leads to these results. So you want to keep that in mind, even in the at-home setting. Then I can go down to an individual student. I can pick somebody out in particular. I can look further into their data here. I can look at Izzy, take a look at how many points and how much time she spent in this zone and how much distance she covered, how many steps worth. This is how her day went as far as level of intensity during the class. I see how her breakdown comes. I can switch this over to a heart rate graph. I can see how her heart rate graphed out during this. Here you can clearly see the time where we did the warm-up and that pacer, and then we went into our different gameplay for the day. This is where she had a little bit of a water break, and then she came back into our lesson. So just using the data here, you're really able to get a true snapshot of a student's day of activity.
Hey, Chris, are you sharing your whole screen or just the browser tab?
I believe I'm sharing the whole screen.
Yeah, I got to take the tab. Just hit the tab you want to show.
Right now I'm in a different browser. Do you see this or no?
I'm seeing like everything in your screen.
Oh, okay.
On the,
So that's not what I want to do.
yeah. Just bring up the browser. Make sure it's open in the window, and then you can select the tab that you want to show. Browser has to be on the screen, not in the tray. Sorry.
Okay.
There we go. There you go.
Okay. We can see this now, this workout report?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Now can you scroll down?
Yep. So I'll go
there
back.
You go. Perfect. Now we got it. All right.
All right. So here you can see this is actually what I was just talking about the day after that presentation. You can see here the overview snapshot, how it's, starkly different from what the presentation showed. Average steps, distance for each student. Now this is the snapshot over the entire duration of the class. You can see here during the middle time, that level of intensity was very high. We can have a zone breakdown here and see this is much different than the presentation zones and very top heavy here as far as our minutes. But this goes to lesson design like I just talked about. Then I'll go into the individual student. This is just that one day, one activity, one class. Still 32 minutes, but 87% of her time it was spent in MVPA, which equated to 28 minutes. And you can see Izzy here for her max heart rate was at 212 beats today. So that's something I definitely want to see. I want to go back to her user profile. I want to see what I had her max heart rate set at prior to. If it wasn't at 212, if it was lower than 212, now I want to make that adjustment up to 212 beats for her max. If it was less, then I would lower it down. Here's the goals. My goal today was percent of MVPA time. She met that. I did not have a step goal, and I didn't have a minutes MVPA goal. I just had a percentage, and you can see her percentage of 87% is certainly over 50% threshold. So she got that check mark for completing that. Here's her bar graph, and then here is her heart rate curve. And that's just the last piece I wanted to show you there in particular using the web portal. And like I said, all of this data is going to come right back from that home app as well. So you'll be able to see this right in this user's profile and differentiate at home and in school workouts and exercises. So that's all I had to share for that.
Okay, great, Chris. I'm sorry about that. It was You need a new director, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
We
that
got
was
it.
good stuff. Okay, Brian, you're gonna.
Yeah.
There we go.
I definitely want to take a look at some of your new resources you just came up with.
Okay, so I may be having the same issue here. Okay, 1 second here.
Yeah, just to select the tab, right?
So are you able to see this?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep. Looks
Okay,
good.
so one of the big things going on in the social media world, and I think this is really important, is kind of keeping the learning fun and interesting for students. So one of the really cool things that I saw that really motivated me to make is this virtual classroom. And I forget how many links I have on here, but basically it just says welcome to our new classroom. Click on any object for a task to complete or for a workout to participate in. So especially for next year, I just made this, but I'm envisioning posting this classroom each week and then maybe leaving all the objects but switching the links up underneath each object, so when a student clicks a link it brings them to a different task, and maybe having it more student-led instruction where maybe if today's Monday I'm like, okay, students, your job is to click on any of the 2 objects in the classroom, complete the task, and then send me the assignment or email me what activity you chose and why, for example. So, for example, if I were to click on this dice, it's going to bring up an example of an activity that involves dice. And some of my students may not have a dice at home, so I would maybe just have them on a piece of paper write numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and basically put them behind their back and just draw one. So there's ways to modify this. And as you can see, this is from Kevin Tiller. But basically, I want to make learning as interesting as possible. So, like, for example, another one is if they click the basketball, I have a video on YouTube that is basically just a simple 5-minute basketball workout using dribbling and shooting skills.
Awesome.
I
We talked
I
about
do-
this last week in particular, this kind of virtual classroom being so much more personal, hopefully trying to connect with the student on a more personal level as opposed to the coldness of maybe a Google Classroom type scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I do have learning pieces in here. So if you click on like this components of fitness, this is an assignment that I've made, which basically the students have to define each of the components of fitness, the health related and the skill related. And then they also have to describe how they've worked on that component, either like within the current school year or previous school years, and also type up one sentence as why that component is important in their life. I have an aerobic fitness test to see how much students know in terms of aerobic capacity and cardiovascular endurance that students would be able to take with that. So I mean, I just think a variety right now is super important for students.
So what platform do you use, Brian, to get the information back from the students?
So I use Google Classroom, so I still haven't really thought about how I'm going to implement it, but I know I would share my students the published link, which what you're seeing now. And if I have them pick 2 objects or 2 tasks for the day, they would they would obviously have to make their own copy of the document. So, for example, back to where we just were, the students would have to. Well, actually, I would set up the link to where it's a forced copy. So, the system would automatically create a copy of the document for them, and then all they would have to do is hit share in the top right corner to share it back to me.
Mhm. Have you thought about, okay, so this would be an at-home activity. Have you given any thought as to if you do come back to school and restrict it to 10 students in a class, have you given any thought yet to how you might handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely do it really similar. So, like, for example, if you click on these resistance bands here, this comes up with a workout that my partner and I created that involves exercise bands. So, of course, you can maintain proper social distancing using exercises like this. And I know it's loading. So, I would probably do a lot of stuff like this, which I know it takes a lot of the fun out and the interaction out, but at least they're still able to work on the components of fitness. And as they're doing this, I'd be able to um, explain to the students the importance of what they're doing and what components of fitness they're working on.
Now, I'm sure most people are going to be in a scenario, at least off the beginning, where it's a half virtual and half in-person situation.
Yep.
So I know, like, all this content we're creating now is going to be super important come the future. And then I believe that the students being so ingrained in it now, and then in the beginning of next year, it's going to be much more palatable for them to now see work coming home from phys ed in a digital format, almost like homework for them. And I know that was something that we would always get pushback in the past about, of this homework aspect of really going home and having something to do, that we're telling you take time for yourself and learn about your physique and your anatomy and physiology, and then go put it to use and be active. So now I think that has eased that tension, and now students across the board will be much more apt to, okay, I need to check all my subjects, including PE, and what Mr. Hull has going on his den wall, because, you know, 1 or 2 of my phys ed classes are just that. They are at home, and I need to now produce work for Mr. Hull while I'm at home. And of course, if we can have this technology in their hands from heart rate, you'll be able to get a whole nother level of productivity from them.
Oh, absolutely.
I had one more thing I wanted to share, Rich, and I don't know how many people use this out there. I have my screen. Let me share it here. I want to share this one. So it's the whole tab. And this is called Seesaw. And I think it's much more user-friendly as far as an elementary level goes. So I just want to log in to my account here. I have it open. So here's my Seesaw account, and districts are using this with younger students instead of Google Classrooms because it's a little bit more interactive and maybe student and mom and dad friendly. So what's nice about this is I can post things here just on my live streaming wall, and you can see, let me just hide this for a second. You can see here, if any student were to post on this wall, it's here for my review, and then I would go in and approve what this said. And what's great about Seesaw is right in this application, we can record our voices. So I did yesterday, for example, when I put up on my student's wall here, and I'll get back to some of that in a second. Here, when I put up my activity yesterday, this is a link to my distance learning activity where it goes right to my EduCreations, and that's what I'm going to show next. And this is our sidewalk activity path that we did. And I linked it here, but I'm also able to link my voice. So here, by going right into here, I put this memo. So I'm able to not only type, but then right in this application, I can then voice record right over my note here. So a student can
awesome.
the student can either read it or then just press on this and hear me. And then what we did here is we took our Google Doc and we used an application called EduCreations. And in EduCreations, it's pretty simple. You can see my lessons here. Here are my lessons. If I create a new lesson, it comes to a new screen. Okay, this is for this. I won't go into that, but I will show you my lesson here. I can create a new lesson and then link directly to my, Google Drive. And then with my Google Drive there, that link drops right into the activity. And then my activity is voiced over on all that. So it is nice. And then what students can do, as you can see here, they can drop their little videos right in here. So this looks like a little baby shark videos from some of our students. Oh, nice.
That's really cool.
Definitely. Awesome.
So right in this stream, they could drop their videos, drop their pictures. They can audio record over just like I did. So they could say, hi, Mr. Meck. And then they could say, hi, Mr. Meck, I miss you. So it's a little more kid friendly. And, you know, if you don't really have elementary kids, you probably don't know that this is being used or out there. But it's definitely something to think about if you're an elementary teacher. Like I said, really user friendly. Here's the activity path that these students did yesterday after I posted my activity. So these are siblings that I have at school. And I mean, it's just great that they can send these so quickly. And of course, you can like it. You could comment right on here. I can save the video to my desktop. So it is really friendly in that sense as well. So that's just something I wanted to share because maybe not many individuals are using that right now. And then that coupled with Google Drive and EduCreations makes it real nice to put all your own audio over those lessons. So maybe if you don't want to show your face or don't need to show your face or body for an exercise or lesson and you just need to dialogue over it, that's a great way to do it. And I think I'm done with my screen now, Rich.
Okay. Sorry. So what? Okay. So considering budget constraints, Chris and Brian, what are going to be some options to, because we're going to need, if we are back in school, we're going to need more equipment. We're going to talk about sanitizing the equipment. Budgets are going to be stretched in any way. So I think we've got to get in line, I guess, for some funding. So any thoughts and ideas on that?
Sure. Well, of course, we have all our traditional funding streams that you may or may not know about out there. I know Rich has compiled a good list with HeartTech Plus as far as grants that are out there and well known by state, and then federal grants that you could apply for. Currently, Gopher has a new promotion out there. They have an at-home PE subscription. So this is something we had talked about in weeks past with Jordan from Gopher. This is an at-home subscription box that an individual can sign up for. And then now how they're having that give back to your PE program in particular is for every new subscription that your school signs up, for every student, you get $10 back for equipment spending in their catalog on the PE program in particular. So I have about 300 students in my school. If I did have 300 sign up, I would have a couple $1,000s there to also impact my local program and the need for more equipment when I go back in person. I think also when we look at what the federal government is doing, we always need to keep a close eye on what kind of stimulus packages they're putting out. And everyone needs to be super diligent on signing up and getting in line for that, including phys ed, when it comes to the CARES Act stimulus funding that the feds should be sending to our states and then down to our local educational organizations in the next few weeks. So I would hope that districts are beginning to get some state funding and some federal funding on hand and are able to start purchasing for the end of the year in preparation for next year. So when you see things like Seesaw, when you see things like what Brian brought to the table and what he's creating out there, if there's anything that costs money or may cost money, you want to make sure that you compile that list and get that to your administrator. I know Shape America has an ESSA funding document, which we have, Rich has changed a little bit to be more COVID CARES Act friendly. If you want to share the screen, Rich, I have that document that I can share.
Okay.
And what this is this is just a little justification that you can share, you can customize it. Everything needs to be customized for your particular setting and scenario and culture for your school. But really what you want to do is you want to get your ducks in a row. You want to be able to present to your physical education director, or your athletic director, your superintendent or administrator. You want to really be able to justify why PE and health should be getting some of these resources. Of course, now there's an abundance of research out there of how inactive students are being at home and what that sedentary lifestyle and screen time is doing to them. So of course, take this document, add research links to it, so it gives your administrator something really to pull from when they're asking for those funds. So down here is just a little link that shows the press release that gave the initial funding to states. Hopefully there'll be more funding coming. This is how you can see exactly what your state allocation was. Then we talk a little bit about here what CARES Act and ESSA funding should be doing, how the program that you're presenting to them will help solidify the remote learning educational experience. You are preparing for September, you're preparing for the future if we need to close down. So as it goes through here, all of this should be read over, changed, and adjusted for your setting and what will ultimately be your needs for your district in order to keep your students learning in a remote capacity. Here are some links to some research. You could, of course, change those out or make them more prevalent to what you need to be doing. Talking about web-based curriculum content provider that you need. Then you're talking about how are we going to take a look at data? How are we going to collect data? Of course, Google Classroom will get us all our written data that we need. When we talk heart rate, pedometer, accelerometer, that'll go into the realm of objective data collection materials. You can put any kind of whatever your district wants to use or is looking to use. This is the justification blurb for it. So fill this out and change it up accordingly. Here's a link to Gopher and all the dynamic PE that they have available for educators and their curriculum through Dr. Pangrazi, which is, you know, obviously research-based and top-notch curriculum that should be implemented and could be implemented at home. Here's some more research and data. This is how you might evaluate your program. With this new CARES Act funding, though, a lot of this is not meant to be what you need to evaluate. You don't need evaluation with this. This is free money to the states and to the districts to simply get you ready for another remote learning experience.
Yep, good point.
Here is hopefully what you gain to learn about students' habits at home and how you can hope to see increases in other areas through the use of this technology even at home, but of course in school too. So if you are going to be in school in September, we still need this technology. We still need these applications. We need these websites ready to go so we can have that full, whole student-centered approach. What do you want to think about? If I'm a teacher at home and I don't have the device that I need to properly do the job, I need to get that device. Hopefully funding like this would allow for that. What kind of PE specific apps are we talking about? That EduCreations is something that the district purchases. There is a free version, but the purchase version is what's going to allow you to simply drop in those Google Drive documents that you've already created in your Google Slides. You're able to drop that in and then voice record right over that. So there isn't a cost to that pro version. If that's something the district is looking at, maybe it's a suggestion that comes from you because it is very elementary friendly, but there is a cost, and maybe that cost would go into that funding. Of course, any kind of technology, heart rate monitoring that you might want to incorporate, and Rich has added some HeartTech specific pricing in here. But of course, no matter what you're looking or what you're using to implement, this should be your entire budget list down here of what you're hoping to use this money for. So take this document, adjust it, change it. There's an ESSA document that's very similar from Shape America that hasn't been changed. It's still for ESSA funding, and that should be given every year to your administrator, so you get a piece of that ESSA funding when it comes to the district as well. Also here we have just a little letter that might go to your superintendent or your district director, and just how you hope to use it and what you're hoping to use in the upcoming future. So that's really all I had to share there, and that is available. Rich has those 2 documents linked in the description box, and you could easily get them and then manipulate them yourself. So I think I'm done sharing my screen, Rich.
Okay. Bri, anything else on that, on funding that you wanted to say?
No, I mean, Chris is definitely more the guru when it comes to that. I mean, we're all going to have to advocate for everything we're going to want and we're going to need. I mean, that's reality.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to want money, and it's going to, I think, come down to who wants it the most.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Greg. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we have to advocate why we're so important to our students during this pandemic and during these really unorthodox times.
Right. And I wanted to add in terms of our company, yes, we are an activity tracking company, and we feel we have the best product out there. We're probably a little biased, but we're not just. We don't want to look at our company as just that alone. Our team is willing to help you in any way they can with providing information around curriculum or funding, whatever. We want to be there to be, as I said earlier when I first started tonight, we want to be there we want to be a solution for you. So, I always tell teachers, do your research, and you decide which activity tracking product you want to buy. Sometimes what I hear from teachers, the first product they come across, they purchase, and I would urge them, whatever you decide to use for an activity tracker, that's perfectly all right with us, but do your research and really look at all the different products out there and decide which one is best for you. Chris?
And I think you really want to know the scenario and setting you're going to be going into in the future, at least a little bit, to know what kind of product you really need. Is it something that, is going to be mostly in the gymnasium? Is it something that's going to be both in the gym and outdoors on the school premises? Or is it going to be something that's going to be taken into the home? And when it's taken into that home, you need to find something that will work with you as the teacher, and where you can be able to help set the parameters for the students learning while at home. And this, this system that HeartTech has come up with allows just that. We can set parameters for students to achieve at home, and then they can report that back to us. All other tools are really just made to collect the data and not necessarily give goals for students to reach or achieve. And then giving that feedback is maybe not so as meaningful in some scenarios. So you want to really make sure, what your setting is going to be and what you need out of the product in order to make it the best investment for you and your students.
Yep, I agree.
Anything else, Bri, on your end?
No, I think I'm okay. I would just say we definitely need to be innovative, especially going into next year, about how we're interacting with students, how we're engaging with the students, and how we're kind of teaching our students in terms of what are we giving them to have fun with, engaging with, and how can they get the most out of it.
Great. And you see scrolling on the bottom of the screen is our website to our group's education solution. So don't hesitate to check that link out and like I said, do your research, and we're here for you, and anything we can do to help you, don't hesitate to reach out. Anything else, guys?
No, thanks so much again for putting this on, and thanks for the time tonight.
Okay.
Yep. Likewise. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, and please share and share the video with your colleagues. Take care now. Good
Have
night.
a good night. Thank you, guys.
All right. Good night.